and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and more importantly, NASCAR home. Brian and I are back from Las Vegas, back in our typical surroundings. We don't look like we're on a hostage video anymore, which is probably a good thing for both of us, and back in our comfy chairs and
Yes.
back from Vegas. But Brian Twining, we had an amazing time. Vegas treated us well. I guess just overall thoughts and feelings of your second NASCAR race and your first playoff NASCAR race.
Yeah, with it being my second one, I was able to kind of go into it knowing what I was going to see, but also we were able to have a little bit of better access than I had the first time. So that was incredible, getting to take pictures with some of the drivers, a couple of my favorites, Bubba Wallace and Ryan Blaney. Kyle took a picture with Kyle Larson. We actually saw Devontae Adams there. So it was pretty incredible. But I think overall, my biggest takeaway from being at the NASCAR races this season is that the vibe at a NASCAR race as opposed to a regular team sport event is just so much more relaxed. Like there's security there, but it's not as tightly watched as you go to a baseball game or an NFL game in particular, where you can't even like stick your arm over the railing towards the players without a security guard like pushing you back. This is just so much more chill. Everybody's just there having a good time. I mean, it's probably one of my favorite kind of events now to go to.
Yeah, so it was I really enjoyed that you had been there before, so you kind of had a general idea of where to go and what to do. I think that helped make the experience better for both of us. Obviously, having the VIP pass and being able to walk around the garage and walk around where all the cars are. But yeah, it's insane, like how they just let people be back there and like where the haulers are and where the garage is and people, and they're just moving cars around and they just like, oh, just can you move over a little bit while we move this big old car out of the way and push it over here. And most of the drivers were super accommodating, super friendly. We got, at FPAOP on Twitter, at AOP Podcast on Instagram. Go check out a lot of our pictures are posted there. Brian getting one with Bubba and Ryan Blaney was pretty unique, and obviously in their fire suits getting ready to head to the track. It was pretty cool they were all really nice. Obviously, your guy Denny Hamlin. We got, as you mentioned, Devontae Adams was there checking out the race.
I got a picture of Chris Buescher, a weekly favorite here on the podcast.
We checked all the boxes. We got all the stuff. I wish we could have met Ross. He was the only one that wasn't like we didn't run into at one point or another. But outside of that, it was an amazing experience. Kind of got a little warm sitting directly in the sun on the bleachers. That's kind of like the big drawback, but honestly it wasn't that bad.
Mean, I think too the race was that much more exciting as well, because both of us at one point in the race had the race leader. I had an outright on Ryan Blaney, who looked to be, prior to crashing, probably the fastest car and maybe the best car on track. And then you had Ross the Boss Chastain, who we were tripping out over those last few laps, only to watch Joey effing Logano sneak up and catch him with 3 laps to go.
Yeah, I think that's a good transition into the actual race. Obviously Logano pitting and getting fresh tires was the difference. And, I was watching Ross and he got a big lead. And as soon as he had to run 10 or 15 laps or more, his car didn't quite have it.
It was interesting though, too, throughout the race, you kind of saw that the race leader had initially during restarts, or even when the race started, the guy that jumped out to the lead, he got a pretty significant lead, maybe like 8 to 10 car length lead. But then eventually the second and third place guys, even while racing each other, were able to kind of get to the bumper of the leader and challenge for that leading spot. And it was almost as if like the clean air, as much as it helped, it also hurt the fact that they weren't running their car as strong, I guess. It was really interesting to see that somebody trailing so far behind was able to catch up regardless of tire, life or anything of that nature.
100%. The one thing I will say is your guy Ryan Blaney, I think, had maybe the fastest car out there, and obviously, the way his day ended was not ideal.
However, he did have a couple of pit crew snafus before wrecking anyway. So in all likelihood, they would have effed up the
so
last
on
pit stop
brand for
anyway.
him. Like he has a fast car, he looks great on the track, and then something happens in the pits and things go poorly. And Bubba was the other one who looked like he had an incredibly fast car, and I think that was a big, obviously, like he probably shouldn't have tried to dive down on Kyle Larson and spin him out. And obviously the drama with all around that was crazy, but his car was incredibly fast. And I think he was extremely mad that his car, like he wasn't going to be able to run it like he did. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I think Blaney and Bubba probably had two of the fastest cars just sitting there, watching the race in person. I also wish I got to figure out a headset or something so we can listen to the call of the race, because there was times where you're trying to figure out, okay, is this guy actually racing for the lead, or is he just in 23rd and he happens to be stuck in, lap traffic? So that was a little bit of a challenge too.
So they do rent out like communication headphones, or you can actually buy your own and just bring them to races, and you can like scan the channels.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's just cool to like still be able to hear and feel like the sheer power of these cars driving past you.
Yeah, if you've never been to a race, highly recommend trying to get one in. Bring something to cover your ears or earplugs, and don't plan on talking to your friends very much, because nothing is going to happen the whole race. Like,
or just practice lip reading, or learn how to do sign language.
Yeah, or like type
go.
it on the notes app on your phone and show each other. But yeah, it's something that is a unique experience. Obviously, if you can get any sort of garage access, that's totally worth it. I think that might have been the coolest part, is just the access we had and being able to see all the cars so close and talk to the drivers and whatnot. So that being said, Brian, let's look at how we did on our bets. It was a nice rebound for your guy, because my God, had I been on a cold streak. And obviously there was a couple bets that I did not hit. That Ross Chastain winner, I thought I had. I thought it was done.
We thought that was hidden.
I was like 8 laps to go, 7 laps to go, 6 laps to go. Joey Logano, and at least it was one of your like nemesis coming back to get the win.
It couldn't have finished any better, like just for the show purposes of like my arch nemesis.
Ross Chastain got second. Kyle Busch, despite having all kinds of issues,
oh my goodness,
salvaged a top 3 day. So I didn't have the winner, but I had second and third. So I guess that's good. I don't know, so probably should have gone with top 3s or top 5s on those guys and locked in the profit, but that's okay. And then Michael McDowell, we took at 300 to 1. Never really there, but 300 to 1 for a guy that should be like 60 to 80. Happy to take it. Eric Jones, that was a great call on your part. I was along for the ride there, got that top 10. Almirola, not so much. And then obviously
did look good early though. He was early on in the race, he was inside the top 10, but just over the long runs, he didn't have the speed.
Yep. And obviously having Logano in head-to-heads was a good move, as he won the race. So Logano over Elliott, cash that, plus 130. Logano over Bubba early in the week, minus 130. Went 5 units on that. That was a nice hit for me. Ross over Denny. Kyle Busch over Martin Truex. Chase Briscoe over William Byron at plus 185. The big
and
number.
The fact that Briscoe went a lap down. I think he was like one of the first or second guys to go a lap down before I think it was like right after stage 1. The fact that he was able to work his way back up and finish the race 4th was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was an impressive performance from him. I was kind of optimistic about what he could be. And Kyle Busch, top Toyota, 5 to 1, hit that. Bang! My one big downfall was my Cindric top 10. I felt like he was pretty good most of the day.
Well, remember at one point the Penske cars were 1, 2, 3,
Yep.
I believe, and you could tell that they were fast.
Mm-hmm.
And just Cindric had issues, and then once he got a little bit of contact, a little bit of car damage, he just wasn't the same.
Yep. So overall, a green week for me. I'm very happy to get back in the green. Still have some work to do, but we still have some races to climb out. Over reflecting on your car, Christopher Bell, Kyle Busch. We talked about Kyle Busch, talked about Ryan Blaney. A lot of these guys had legitimate chances. Ricky Stenhouse is a waste of money, but that's okay.
Yeah, Stenhouse and Buescher were pretty slow.
Yep.
I was actually surprised at how slow Buescher's car was.
Me too. And obviously going heavy on outrights, you're not gonna, unless you hit one, you're not gonna have a great week. But you did have your Eric Jones. You did not hit Ricky Stenhouse top 10. I tried to warn you. The McDowell number was good, but it did not come to fruition. Justin Haley was there for a minute and actually looked like
early, but
and then kind of faded. Obviously, the Kyle Busch over Truex head-to-head was a great call on your part. Hitting your best bets and your big unit plays will keep you in the green. So despite a week where you didn't hit as many bets as you probably would like, you were still able to have a decent week, turning a slight profit and keeping that grind going, keeping that bankroll built, and keep it rolling along. So unfortunately, while Brian and I were there, I did not realize you can't actually enter DraftKings lineups there. So that was a big buzzkill. But
damn you, Vegas.
We have our lineups. So a mixed bag. Almirola was good early, kind of fell apart. Blaney looked the part. It kind of fell. Briscoe never really there. Kyle Busch at 9,300 was a smash. And then Truex and Gragson were just whatever.
I mean, Gragson ran well. He finished 11th. Truex was a guy. He was running pretty well during the race. I mean, he finished 7th. So, honestly, if we were able to
actually, that's true.
These might have cashed. Although with the Ryan Blaney finishing multiple laps down, I mean, and after starting 4th, you're probably getting 15, maybe 20 points out of him.
Yep. And then our other lineup, obviously, Chase was never in the picture all day.
Nope.
It was a really kind of underwhelming race for him. Kind of interesting to see him. We talked about Cindric's kind of up and down, and then Haley was there early, not so much late. Obviously, Eric Jones starting 22nd and finishing inside the top 10 was a nice call. And then Recce spinouts was typical Recce spinouts. So probably a good week to just not have to enter.
Yes. We were very fortunate. I mean, the luck was on our side in Sin City, I guess you could say.
But we do want to be transparent, show you guys what we're doing over on DraftKings and kind of get it going. That being said, we're going to Miami. We're going to Homestead. And we are going to dive into the first look at the odds, as Tyler Reddick is your favorite at 7-1. Right behind him, Denny Hamlin at 7-8, 8.5 at FanDuel if you like him. My guy Ross the Boss, 10 pretty much across the board. Kyle Larson, 8-10. Your guy Ryan Blaney, anywhere from 9-10. Joey Logano, 8-10. Chase Elliott, they're really, I mean, Martin Truex, I'll cut it off at Chase just because there's so many guys bunched up. But as we sit inside this 10-1, I think Reddick is the favorite for a reason. He is really set up to have a good week this week, but there's a lot of interesting names that kind of in that 10-1 or lower range. What names are jumping out to you?
Okay, so first of all, I do want to point out, I don't know how much this is going to factor in here, but I do think that it's something to consider is that the prior 2 years, this race had been ran early on in the season as opposed to late in the year. And we all know what the weather's like in South Beach or in Florida when you get into October. It's still hot and humid as hell, as opposed to racing in May or June where, it's just starting to heat up. So I don't know if the track conditions are going to have that much of a difference on the way that these cars race, but I do think that is something to consider. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you take Reddick off your card, who has absolutely crushed at this track the last 2 years because he runs that high line and he's able to just stay there the entire race. But for me, I'm going to skip over him and I'm going to go to Denny, who has quietly been putting together probably the most impressive playoffs of any driver. I mean, this guy has 4 top 5s. I think he has an average finish of around like 6.5 or 7 since the playoffs started. He's won at Miami 3 different times. He's actually started first at this race 5 consecutive and 6 of the last 7 trips here.
So should we look at those poll odds and put them on there just for mental stake?
I think 3 of them are actually, though, you have to also keep in mind that I think 2 or 3 of them are during the COVID situation where they were just giving them based on points. But that still means this guy qualifies extremely well here. He runs really well here. I think he's finished outside the top 10 once over the last whatever ridiculous amount of races at this track. So if you can get Hamlin at almost a unit and a half better at FanDuel than anywhere else, you got to grab that.
Yeah, I think if you like Hamlin, definitely shop it. Get at least 8 to 1, 8.5 to 1 is the best number. I think that makes sense.
Before we go down, you were on him last week. I'm going to go there this week. Ross the Boss Chastain, 10 to 1. This dude has been incredible at intermediates this year. He proved it again last week at Vegas, where maybe they tinker with the car a little bit, give him a little more long run speed this week, which could really pay off. And, at 10 to 1 early in the week, this will probably shrink down closer to 8, closer to that Hamlin number 8.5 after qualifying. So if you like Ross the Boss, grab that 10 to 1 number now.
Yeah, I think that's a great call on your part, and a guy who's been really good at the intermediates. And as somebody holding a futures ticket on him to win the NASCAR Cup at a nice number, I would love to see him keep this momentum going and really find some form down the stretch.
However, we also have to remember that payback or revenge, if it's going to happen, is coming within the next couple of races.
If Denny does it, I mean, it sure feels like he'll be gone. I think maybe it was going to be this week. I don't know. But he's right there. Coming. He's right there. And then here comes Denny. He's like, nah, waved him. Joey Logano.
Gross.
I know, but his history at this track is incredible. Just won on the 1.5 miles. Now goes to another warm track, another intermediate track, a place where he's had tons of success. Pretty surprised, honestly, to see him priced at 10 to 1. Yeah. It maybe is hard for some people to go back to the well after just winning, but he really does make a compelling case. I wonder with him locked into the championship, into the Final Four, if it's close and he's not quite he's probably going to try and win it. But like if he's right there with somebody and he's just, I can't quite get it. He just lets off the gas just enough, gets his second, moves along, and keeps it going. But I think at 10 to 1, he makes a really compelling option this week.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to start considering, especially as we wind down the rest of this season, is the injury issue with this new car. And I think that does play a factor into the aggressiveness of these guys, like a Joey Logano, who's already locked in, who would probably traditionally fight for the win even more aggressively, knowing he's already advanced into the next round. So you might see him kind of lay off, not wanting to get hurt, with the potential of him missing the championship race and, be satisfied with the second or third place finish, as opposed to doing what he normally does, move people out of the way and ruin other people's betting cards to get the win. So, I mean, it'll be difficult to get there. And there's other guys with the same odds who I think are going to be driving a little bit harder to go for the win, in my opinion, that I would prefer to go to.
Yeah, I get that. I just think his skill set.
He's strong everywhere. I mean, I'm not going to hate on the guy for how good he is. It's just when I bet him, he sucks. When I don't bet him, he kills us.
So we're betting Joey Logano this week, Brian. Stay away. Yeah. I think it's definitely interesting. We'll keep it rolling as we got Chase Elliott, we have Martin Truex, we have Christopher Bell, we have William Byron and Kyle Busch, all kind of round out that around 12 to 1 crew. Are you considering any of these 4, 5, 6 drivers as potential options for your outright card this week?
Well, I mean, we're going back to the same guys every single week, but Christopher Bell, prior to being wrecked by the Bubba Wallace Kyle Larson incident, he was running inside the top 5, and he was looking to be extremely strong last week in Vegas, and he was going to contend for a win there. And he's had two. Lady Luck was not on his side in Las Vegas this season. Both races, he wound up getting some car issues. Him at 12-1, and then Kyle Busch sitting at 14-1. If you can get him at that number when he's 10-1, I think that's DK right there. Like, both of those guys are probably going to be running near the front. They're going to qualify probably close to the top 7 or 8, possibly even inside the top 5, and that number is going to shrink. So I don't hate going back to the well with either one of those guys. And honestly, Busch in particular, who trying to finish out his career with JGR extremely strong. He's looked really good. He looked fantastic last week in Vegas, even with the issues that he had. And if he could avoid that crap, like, you're looking at a guy who could potentially run away with a race.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, we are kind of gravitating towards similar names, but I think for the right reasons. And Kyle Busch is interesting to me just because it's been such a rough ride for him lately.
Yeah.
But to see him pop at Vegas gets me excited. And like, as you mentioned, being able to grab that 14-1, I think is a really good number. And
it's interesting too, because he had sucked the previous 4 intermediates. Yep. And that was when the whole contract situation was going on, blah, blah, blah. But prior to that, Kyle Busch is one of the best, if not the best, 1.5 mile intermediate track racer in the Cup Series. So, I mean, getting him at these numbers is probably something that should be on your card every week.
And with that being said, he is on my card. So right now I have 2. It's probably going to be 3. I added Logano. I added Kyle Busch. And then I think I want to put Ross on there, but I've got to debate that, and I'll probably end up hemming and hawing and figuring out a way to add it at a shorter number, but that's okay.
Yeah, as of right now, the 2 outrights that I'm riding with early in the week are Hamlin at 8.5, and then Ross the Boss Chastain at 10-1. I'll probably go back and add a Ryan Blaney. Probably before practice or qualifying. I got to decide whether or not I want to continue riding this, because I still think the guy's going to win a race before we end the season, but there's only 3 races left. So
I think before qualifying is definitely the move. We'll dive down, as kind of the next chunk is a pretty significant jump. We have Kevin Harvick at 18-1, and Brian, the Kevin Harvick fan, that every time.
Oh gosh, that was great.
Every time Kevin Harvick went around, this one guy would stand up, he would wave his arm around in a circle, and the car would go by, and he'd get so excited every single lap. It was hilarious.
It was fantastic.
Shouts to NASCAR fans. They are truly of a different kind. Bubba Wallace will not be racing. Don't play city bets. Don't put him in your DraftKings lineup. He is suspended for the week for his incident with Kyle Larson. Larson moved him up the track. He was mad. He cut down on him. They spun out, and then he went over and fight him, and it was a whole thing. Noah Gragson, 25 or 30. Chase Briscoe. We've seen this guy pop at 1.5 miles. He's compelling this week, and you can get him at 30-1. I am going to add him to the card for a small price.
Ooh, I can't hate on that, because, like I said, as we were leading into this, the fact that he was able to maneuver his way into a 4th place finish this last weekend in Vegas after going a lap down early on and looking like he was going to finish outside the top 25, top 30 was extremely impressive. And we've seen him pop before and compete at a track where you don't necessarily think he's going to do so. And so at that 30-1 number, that's a good value for a small wager.
And I think what I'm going to do, Brian, we'll check the numbers before we get out of here. But if I think Chase Briscoe can win this week, I probably should put a small wager on his championship odds. Because if he wins this week,
because he locks in,
he's locked in, and his number is going to shrink dramatically. So we'll have to remind me to take a look at that before we get out of here. The next group is interesting. We have Daniel Suarez, 28, 30, 33. Austin Cindric, you can get a 40 on him. I don't hate that. John Hunter Nemechek will be driving Bubba's car. right? He's driving the 45 this week.
Yeah, I think he's driving the 45.
Interesting numbers on him. Could be more of a top 10 type bet, maybe DraftKings. Our guy Eric Jones, once again, interesting spot for him.
I don't know if I could get there with the outrights.
No. He's probably a top 10, top 5 type bet. And then just kind of the next crew of like, I don't know. Dinger is fine. If you want the 150, I don't hate. I mean McDowell rather. If you want the 150, that's fine. But I'm not really trying to get.
That's like a dime bet. I do think this is definitely a week again to attack the matchups. And I mean, you did it last week. You absolutely crushed your matchups, which definitely benefited your betting card. But
100%. Speaking of matchups, let's check out the matchups and see what we can find, because I think that is a good spot. Oh, Brian.
It's getting added. It has to. Payback.
Death Taxes and fading Joey Logano is one of your favorites.
Look at this. I'm doubling up right there. Ross Chastain and Ryan Blaney over Joey Logano.
I can't wait for Joey Logano to win again and me to cash that outright. That would be great. Chase at plus 110 against Denny is kind of interesting. Denny's been so good, it's hard to fade him, but plus money on a driver that I like. Interesting. And then Tyler Reddick, price where he
Hamlin
is
at 105 over Tyler Reddick. That's I'm adding that.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to the well here. I'm gonna take Kyle Busch over Martin Truex. Paying a little bit of a price, but I'm fine doing it. It's close enough, and I think I trust Kyle so much more. Elliott over Larson, or Larson over Elliott rather, minus 115. Chase and Ross. Larson and Ross. That's funny. I mean, he's not racing this week, so it doesn't matter, but
this I think this is the first time I'm not fading him. I'm actually going to take Chase Briscoe over Daniel Suarez, because it was interesting to see Suarez like work his way. He was in the front for periods during the race in Vegas, but his like long run speed was non-existent, and he would just fade back like a sinking rock in water.
Yeah. Oh, I'm taking Briscoe over Byron too. Plus 155.
Yeah, that's a good number. So I already had a little bit of action on that one, just for the mere sake that it actually happens at plus 155. That's
if you think two drivers are equal enough on a track, take the number and don't overthink it. Yeah. Now, what about this? Noah Gragson, yes, he's going to be in a good car. He's in the Ally car and obviously racing, but he's a young driver. He's learning his way. Cindric's been pretty solid at the mile and a half. You're giving me plus money on a guy with more experience who has shown, like, obviously it's only his first year, so it's not like he's a vet or anything, but I think Cindric bounces back a little bit this week, and if you're giving me plus money to fade Noah Gragson, I will happily take that.
Yeah, I like that call, but I'm already pretty heavily invested here.
It's fine. It's fine. Let's look at top 10 market and see if there's any fun value to be had there.
So the market's pretty short this week to open. Just to start off with that, I do think though that if we're high on Briscoe, like his number is long enough at minus 105 over at FanDuel, or if you take that Bet Rivers number at plus 125, we think you can both compete here. That's a good bet.
Chase Briscoe is going to break my heart this week, isn't he, Brian?
Oh gosh, it's going to break both of our hearts
and our bankrolls. Cindric at plus 155 is really compelling.
He's a guy though who's been like of late. He's kind of been boom or bust.
Yeah.
Oh, that's.
You want to take the Kez?
No, absolutely not.
You guys will have to go check out our Instagram and see the picture of me and Keselowski. Brian refused to take a picture with the guy. I was more than happy to oblige. And each time he beats Brian, I'm going to post that picture of him just giving the thumbs up. That was
horrible.
Classic Keselowski. He's just the best. Eric Jones, probably a fade this week. I don't know.
Oh no, I'm going back to it.
Oh,
Plus
okay.
180. I do feel that it's a slight overcorrection to where his odds should be. Like I do still think he's probably more in like the 2.5 to 1 range for a top 10 driver, just because he's too inconsistent to consider somebody like a favorite to do that. But he runs really well at these kinds of tracks. And then the other one that I already have added is Austin Dillon, 3 to 1 to top 10 at this track. Dillon has a pretty good amount of success the last 5 trips to Homestead. His worst finish is a 12th place run last year. Prior to that, it was 7th, 8th, 11th, and 11th. And he had a decent run last week in Vegas. So getting 3 to 1, he's this week's Eric Jones for me. Yeah. So I feel pretty strongly that this number should probably be closer to 2 or 1.5 to 1.
Yeah, see, I feel like those guys are very similar, and they should be closer to like at least 2.5 to 3. So that's why I'm kind of off the Eric Jones. The Almirola, I'm trying to convince myself, but his run of late is like high teens, low 20s, and that's just not a place you want to be with a top 10, even at that price. Not going back to the Stenhouse well, I'm guessing.
No, it's too short. 4 to 1 is not a Stenhouse number. He's a 7 to 1, 7 to 10 to 1 guy to even top 10 at this stage.
Yeah, I think
I think it's interesting too. While we were at the track, like we were looking for the JT Doherty hauler, and there was like a section that had like the Live Fast and Front Row Motorsports and the JTG team haulers completely separated from everyone else.
Yeah.
They're like all the outcast small market teams. And I think you're starting to see Aspire, like as we wind down the season, that they've either ran out of funds or they're kind of winding down their season prior to the actual race season ending.
Yeah. And seeing BJ McLeod in person, like he looked like one of the pit crew guys and not one of the drivers. Yeah. All the drivers are these little tiny guys, and big old BJ McLeod coming through. And those dudes, they're the pit crew dudes.
Oh man, they're monsters.
Yeah, they were like WWE superstars. I just was waiting for them to like suplex me onto the car. I was like, Jesus.
Well, I mean, we did. I don't know. Some of you out there might already know this, but I was just curious to find out about the weight of one of the gas cans when it's fully loaded. And the guy told us it's about 95 to 100 pounds that these guys are constantly having to lift up to fuel the cars every pit stop. Like,
and they just flip it around like it's
like it's a paperweight. It's incredible.
Pretty incredible to say the least. Let me do. Let's see. Can we pull up the?
Yeah, we also got to look up the poll stuff.
Oh yeah, good call. So let me flip over to DraftKings Sportsbook. We can look at the odds to win the poll, and then we can look at the odds to win the championship. So Hamlin's 9 to 1. I'm going to throw that on there just for mental stability.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I will add that.
The fact that Christopher Bell is also listed at 9 to 1 for a guy that is like the qualifying king this season is really interesting.
It's also interesting that they think he's going to qualify well enough that his outright number might be a little short, and he might actually be a value this week, or a little long rather.
Yeah, you're right.
Blaney at 10 is interesting.
Bush not so much, just because we haven't seen him qualify like
Briscoe at 25. I don't know. It seems a little.
I wish there was like they should open this market up. Maybe I can send an email here to somebody. We need a top 10 qualifying market.
Yeah, to make the top 10. Like I know our friends offshore sometimes offer that, but
that would be an incredible market on the actual 48s. Yeah, betting markets here.
Let's see here. View all. Actually, Cup Series. No. NASCAR Cup Futures. All right, so Elliott's 2-1. Logano is still 3-1, even though he's guaranteed to lock in, and I think might be an interesting number if you want to just grab it. Especially if you think he has a chance to win this week, because that number could shrink. Chastain's number is fine. The fact that Blaney's still 12-1 is pretty wild to me. Chase Briscoe is 30-1. I am putting that on our season bets article. Season bets sheet. Speaking of season bets, we will be back to recap once the NASCAR season is over. But if you want NASCAR content during the off season, with the NASCAR season coming to a close, please let us know down in the comments and what kind of content you would like to see. Obviously, Brian and I will be back before the season, do another round of season futures, talk about all the driver movement and all the stuff that's happening, because there is a lot of stuff that's going to, a lot of people changing cars, a lot of stuff going on. But if you're interested in maybe a once a month NASCAR pod and you want our thoughts on certain things, let us know down in the comments. While you're there, make sure you smash the thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed. We would love to get to 500 subs before the end of the NASCAR season.
And tell your friends about
it. Tell your friends to tell their friends. If you know your uncle, your dad, your guy at work, whatever that watches
especially
NASCAR.
If they're Joey Logano or Brad Keselowski fans, because I'm always open to a good debate and sports argument.
Always. Okay, Brian, let's recap the card. Let's get the people a best bet and let's get the hell out of here. So, card is let me actually fix that. It makes more sense. The card is coming together. I'm pretty happy with where we're sitting as of Wednesday at 5:30 West Coast time. I have three outrights. I have Logano at 10-1. I have Kyle Busch at 14-1, and I have Chase Briscoe at 30-1. I have four head-to-heads. I have Kyle Busch over Truex, Briscoe over Truex, Briscoe over Byron, and Cindric over Gragson. I also did the Chase Briscoe top 10 at plus 125, and Denny to win the poll at 9-1, because that's what Denny does. Brian, break down your card and give the people your best bet for the week.
All right, to open the week, I only have two outrights, Denny Hamlin and his nemesis, Ross Chastain. So one of the two is getting wrecked, or possibly both this week. Top 10 market, fairly light right now, but Eric Jones, Austin Dillon at 3-1, Chase Briscoe at plus 125. And then in the matchup department, I went pretty heavy here, fading Joey Logano, last week's winner. I got Ryan Blaney over Logano, Ross Chastain over Logano, and Denny Hamlin over Tyler Reddick, the actual race favorite, all for 3 units apiece. And then I'm going Chase Briscoe over Daniel Suarez, which I feel pretty confident about, and Chase Briscoe over William Byron, just like Kyle, just for the number. And then I'm also going with a Denny Hamlin poll at 9-1, considering this guy dominates polls here. And for my best bet, I'm gonna go a little bit risky here, just because, again, I have a little bit of leeway with the amount of units I built up with hitting those outrights earlier in the second half here. But I'm going to go with the Austin Dillon top 10 at 3-1 as we sit here prior to practice and qualifying. This guy's finished 10th in each of the last 2 races coming into this weekend. Like I said, his worst finish over the last 5 in Miami is actually 12th. So I think that this is a great value number and something to jump on now, as more and more people probably start to realize that, and this goes closer to 2-1 later in the week.
Yeah, especially if he qualifies well, that number could shrink real fast.
Yeah, and qualifying well for him is like 15th or 16th. This is not somebody that you need to get inside the top 10 to see this number shrink.
Yep. Yep. I like where your head's at. Man, there's a few things that are jumping out to me. The Briscoe plus 125 to top 10 is a hell of a number. Briscoe over Byron at the plus 155 is a hell of a number. I'm going to go Cindric over Gragson at a plus money. I know Noah's going to
like that a lot
at some point. But I trust Cindric so much more. And after a bad performance last week, I think he gets back into it. We saw how well he qualified. We saw how well he looked when he started the race. Things kind of faded as we went along, and he didn't perform as well. But plus money for a guy that I really, really trust. going in a track that he has done traditionally really well at. I just trust him to do better than the young driver who has been good this season and obviously had a nice performance last weekend at Vegas. So that is my best bet. We will be back in your feed Sunday morning. Make sure you are subscribed so you can get that video as soon as it goes live. Let us know down in the comments your favorite option to top 10 this week. Let us know. That is Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. We're going to go record the Football Bets show. So if you like football betting, college and or pro, come check that out. We'll have some bets for you, 6 picks within like 10 minutes. We'll get in, we get out. We're super tactical. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you next time.